All right, thanks everyone for joining and taking the time out of your day. We're incredibly packed, so I'll get straight into it. Starting off with a question. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's a question that's kind of locked in philosophical debate. Lots and lots of different answers to it, approaches, which is very similar to this question. What came first, the modern data stack or the AI? So I think when you've been around this conference, lots and lots of people have rushed to AI as fast as possible, and they've not got the modern data stack in place. So whether it's a data mesh or whatever strategies you choose, you really do need to employ a modern data strategy and a modern data stack inside your business. So that's kind of the main thing I want people to take away from this session is simplicity, trying to keep it really simple, how you can go about doing it, learn from some of the things that we've done, and then so that you can go back to your business and explain what you need to do and why you need to do it. Because if you don't, four things will happen. Number one is data scientists, analysts, engineers are all going to look like that when you purchase an AI tool and you try to get them to make miracles out of the data that you've got. The second thing that's going to happen is you're going to burn a lot of cash. You're going to purchase tools, you're going to blame the tools because they can't do a lot with your data because of the state it's in. The third, I think every time we look at the news lately, there's an example of where someone's got into a legal dispute because an AI tool has used some data that it shouldn't have. So that's really important. And fourth, the results are going to be poor. There's a lot of buzz around AI, and to get excellent results, you need really good data, and that's going to be really important going forward. So what will I cover today? I'll cover a little bit about me, because I've not discussed that yet. We'll go through what is a data mesh. I'm trying to find the balance here between people who haven't heard of a data mesh before, people who are already implementing a data mesh and trying to get that balance right. I'll also talk about our journey, where we've started, where we're up to, and then I'll focus on two main products because they're my favourite, domain orientated and data as a product. And then last I'll talk about 11 learnings which we've had. There's probably about another 6 or 7 learnings throughout the presentation, but I've not counted them yet, so if you can count them, let me know. So a little bit about me. I'm the head of data strategy at ITV. I've got 14 years experience in product and data roles up to board level, and you can see some of the businesses I've worked in the background. I've got various professional qualifications. One that's not on here is hypnotherapy, which I did a course in. That's probably most useful for data mesh implementation. Where am I from? So you may have noticed by the accent, some people think I'm Scottish. I'm not Scottish. I'm from a town called Bolton, and these are two other people that are also from Bolton. One thing about people from Bolton is we like to keep things really, really simple. So simple, in fact, we miss words out of sentences. We don't say I'm going to the shop, we say I'm going to shop. Nice and simple. And last but not least, you may have never heard of this, but this is a local delicacy. A pasty barm, a bread roll, bread cake, whatever you call it, with a pasty sandwiched in between. Again, really, really simple. And what I want you to take from this is the presentation I'm going to go through is simple, because that's what the data mesh is supposed to be. The principle is supposed to be very, very simple. The data mesh book, if you read it, it is really, really simple. But when I read about it online and on LinkedIn, we've made it very, very difficult. And that makes it very confusing for CEOs and people we're trying to sell this into to adopt it. Because I believe that this is actually our moment in the data world. This is our Agile Manifesto moment that the developers had, engineers. It's our Marty Kagan inspired moment that the product managers have. And it could be our Lean UX moment that Jeff Gothelf employed. But we need to keep it really, really simple. So we'll start off, what is a data mesh? First of all, no matter what anybody says outside this room, it's not something you can buy. So if anyone tries to sell you a data mesh, it's not true, you can't buy it. If it did exist, it'd look something like that. Remember the thing from Men in Black where you hold it up? That's what you'd be buying, because you'd hold something up to the business and you'd be changing mindsets and behavior change in an instant. Very, very difficult to do. So what is the data mesh? This is the kind of definition from the book. You can see the people who talked about it at the bottom. It's about distribution of responsibility and supporting continuous change and the use of management of analytical data. Now, what I want you to think about is what your organization is like. So we've learnt this from kind of our implementation, and this kind of, if you look at this and look at how your organization is, you'll start to see how easy your implementation is going to be. So at the top, you're in a dream world. You've no existing data sources. You're a startup. Really good. You've got top-down mandation, so your CEO can say, this is the way we're going to do things. So that bit is going to be nice and easy. This bit at the bottom, if you've got lots and lots of existing data sources and you need to go through social and behavior change, really, really hard. And then there's two kind of in between. If you've got some existing data sources and you need to do some behavior change, it's kind of okay. So there's a few enablers that I'd recommend. A migration date. So if you have got lots of existing data sources, if someone in your business can stand up and give a date for migration, that's going to be really important to getting people on that journey. Board backing. So who can you get from around your business to back this strategy? And the third is investment fund for tooling. So if your part of the business can have funding for tooling, and the different parts of the business, the domains, use the data mesh, then they can use the tooling and the money pots that you've got. So all those three are enablers. So our journey at ITV, we decided to launch ITVX, so a lot of you may have seen the buzz about that in the market, and it's all about being a destination for consumers to watch things rather than a catch-up service. Because we launched that, obviously there's no tagging and no digital measurement framework in place, so we had to put that in place. And finally we launched the data mesh. So you've got three things all happening at the same time, so usually you'd like ladder one, then the next, and the next. We decided to do it all at the same time and not in a set order, so it's really, really hard because you're launching ITVX, trying to tag everything that you want to tag. We're trying to build data products, trying to implement it into tools, and it's not easy. So the first learning is don't do all these things at the same time. Try and pick one and go with that. So if it's the data mesh, it's the data mesh. If it's the other one, and try and build those foundations first. So now we're going to talk about domain orientated. So lots of words on a screen, but it really is about organization and organizing the business domains inside of your business so that they look after and own the data. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Now, this kind of goes back to what I did my degree in criminology, and we'll take a few tandems in this where we go in different directions, so bear with me. Now, a lot of you will know about, in Chicago, they did a study around broken windows theory, and we use that in coding and architecture today. So if there's a piece of broken code, you should fix that code, otherwise you'll end up with lots of other broken code. And it's very similar to here because we're picking up things from behavior change and psychology and implemented them into our business around data. So how do you go about reducing crime at a cash machine? I would ask for ideas. Some of the ideas you'd probably give me are CCTV, security, all those kind of things. I'm going to give you an even simpler method. And when you go to the nearest cash machines outside of here, have a look on the ground. Put a box around it. That is one of the principles of the data mesh. Domain orientated, it's got a circle around it to look after. And you'll be surprised that when someone is in the cash machine, this was implemented in around 2006. It was a study in Manchester, and it's now in most cash machines around the place. You'll be surprised how much human behaviour changes when you put a box around something. People won't enter that box. Whoever's in the box will tell other people to leave the box, and anyone else who's around there will also say, hang on a minute, you can't go in that box, someone's in that box. And the behaviour starts to change. The same again, this was the Industrial Revolution. We built lots of terraced houses. Opportunistic crime, someone could go along and check every single door and see which one was open. So what did they do? Architecture changes to put a box around it. Now I've got a defensible space. If someone comes in there, I can tell them to get out. So what does that mean in terms of the data mesh? First of all, you've got to get people something to look after and something to own. That's very clear. You've got to make the boundaries very, very clear of what they're looking after. But critically, it's got to be something people care about. So you can create a data product or a domain. If people don't care about the stuff within that, they're not going to look after it. So that's really, really important. So I'm going to give you another example now. Imagine we all own a chocolate factory. Everyone likes chocolate, right? The AI kind of stuff is the stuff at the top. We've got to make lots of different chocolate and lots of different sweets. The R&D department's doing all this. They're saying, we want a new cream egg. This is the data that we all look after today. We looked after it maybe 2 years ago when we built it. It's not been done anything since. And someone says, we want to do something with this data. You've got cardboard boxes that are not very good anymore. You've got milk that's past its use-by date. And what we're asking is data scientists, analysts, whoever, to make miracles with these things and produce really good results at the end. And if we take a domain-orientated approach to it, it looks something like this. Packaging department, chocolate department, oil department. The chocolate department looks after that milk and makes sure they've got the best source of milk. They keep bringing it in so it's already up to date. So if you want to introduce a new tool at the top, you've already got the ingredients. It's already been through governance, it's already been through legal. It's ready to use. And that's a stark contrast to the world in which we live in today. So at ITV, how did we approach this? So you've got to set up your domains, but you could go on an endless amount of domains that you set up. So we decided to focus on the ones with the 3 critical use cases. They were commercial, marketing, and product. And you've got to think in your business which ones have the best use cases and the most critical ones that are going to generate value to set up from the start. This is what I call the data mesh circle. So as I envisage it, you've got the domains which sit inside this concept of the data mesh. You've got data and tooling which comes into it, and you've got the domain teams looking after that data and getting it into a really nice state, ready for tooling which comes out at the end of it. And it's all gone through legal and governance, which is very, very different for how we do data today. And you make sure that's a continuous loop. The products themselves, if you've read the book, you have source aligned and consumer aligned. Source aligned are ones that are closest to the data sources itself, and the consumer lines are starting to gear it up, starting to put different sources together to get it ready for those end tools. And what it means is those tools on the end can be replaced very quickly and very easily. And when you're introducing a new tool, you can do it really, really fast. And it's all about working together. So you're not just restricted to your domain if you get this right. You can use all of the source line products from all of the other domains, which is really, really important. So an example there, I've got the marketing domain and the product domain. It's a product tool in this instance. We've pulled source data from the marketing domain, we've pulled source data from the product domain, we've made a consumer line product, and we've introduced that into the tool. So the difference in why it works is because when you purchase a tool or when you want to use data, it's been loved, looked after, governed, legally signed off. You know it's ready to go. Where when you buy tools today, you go back, you're trying to really work miracles with it. It's very, very difficult because it's not been legally signed off. It needs reviewing, it needs processing, all of those things. So for domain learnings then, you've got to get those domains right from the start, which is really, really important. As well, if you start off with a... Is the sound gone? Is that all right? No. If you start off with a centralized approach, you've got to work out what decentralization looks like and discuss that up front with the domain teams. What is that going to be? When is it going to be? What does it look like? You've also got to bear in mind that those domains may change over time. So if a domain is looking after a set of data products and you decide another domain is more important, they migrate to those data products. What happens with all those? You can't just leave them behind because other people will want to use them. So how do you go about doing that? And ensure there's a regular review process for quality and legal governance. So when you start the data product, you'll do it then, but you need a very regular process to go through. Data as a product. So data as a product is how we rethink about using data as an actual product. It's about how we collect, serve, and manage data. And ultimately, we've all got customers and we've got to provide experiences that delight. The first thing is that we're all in the product business. So a lot of us maybe sit centrally in data teams today, and you imagine using Spotify and all the data that uses. The consumer isn't thinking about data up front, but they're consuming it, whether they're looking at the metadata of the artist that's displayed. And that's what we've got to think about more and more as data teams. We are a product. We've got a product, which is the data, and we're serving customers. We all have customers. It might be product managers, serving them a dashboard. We might be integrating into an actual product and serving consumers. But we've all got customers, and traditionally, maybe we don't speak to them because we sit centrally, we deal with the product managers, but how can we get closer to that end consumer? And that's really, really important to building the right data products. This is another interesting one because it has no end. Previously, we took on requirements as data teams, we built it, then we stopped, moved on to the next thing. But in the data way, the product way of working, there's no end date. And what we need to be conscious of, we either expire the data consciously or it expires organically itself, because if you don't look after it, it expires, and when you buy a tool, it's no longer in a usable state. You've got to speak to your customers, so it might be a dashboard that, as an analyst, you've prepared. What should that dashboard look like? After you've delivered it to them, how are they using that dashboard? Was it what they expected? How do you iterate on that process? How can you build a prototype? So even before you start engineering or you start building dashboards as an analyst, how can you get in front of your customer to understand what that might look like? So it could be a product in itself on the front end, the consumer on the end might be clicking a button. How quickly does that data come back? If it takes 10 seconds to come back, the consumer could be really, really annoyed by that, and the product manager takes that on. So you've got to be really close to the product managers and the end consumers and try and get into those discovery sessions with them. And if you're an analyst, sit with the product managers, get them to use the dashboard with you and understand what it's like. Also, test and iterate. So it could be a wireframe which you draw of what a dashboard looks like, but you've got to go out there and understand what it is and iterate on that, so it comes back around and then you iterate on it again. The approach in the data mesh book is about the first thin slice. So that's looking at your consumers and understanding what the first smallest thing that you can do is to generate value. So we don't go away for 6 months and build a data product. We understand upfront where the long term of that product is, and we build the smallest value first and iterate over time so that we're delivering value often and quickly. This also does cause problems though. If you've got a lot of existing data sources, you can be competing with them. So as I said right at the beginning about how your business is set up, you need to get this right. Are you going to go small and iterative, or do you need a critical mass to build up from the start to get rid of some of those existing data sources that you've got? And a data catalog. So our head of data governance did a good example of this. If you go on to Just Eat, you don't need to know how to make a pizza. You want to consume a pizza, you might want to see the ingredients, and it's all really nice and simple. I don't have to be a chef to understand how to eat a pizza. And it's the same with the people that we're dealing with from a data product perspective. You've got normal everyday people, business users, who want to use different data products but don't want to go into all the detail. How can you bring that really high level so that they can understand what the data product is, the USP about it, and then they can work with those teams to integrate it? There's lots of products out there that offer data catalogs, but make sure it's nice and simple whichever route you take. Again, I talked about this before, but this is the product domain and the actual products inside. So what is a data product then? First of all, it's got to be easy to use. That's really important. It's also got to be easy to understand. The third important thing is it's got to be unique, and this is really hard. When you've got different domains building data products almost at the same time, the different domains that they look after may have similar use cases. So you've got to talk to one another and make sure that that data product you're building is unique. It's also got to be scalable, because you're not just doing this for dashboards anymore, you're building these for products that are used regularly. So it's got to be scalable. Fifth, it's got to create customer value. So there's no point building a load of data products that aren't used. It's got to generate customer value. The sixth one, and this is difficult, but it's objective quality. So how can you work with your business to define what quality means to your organization? So if you've got existing data sets and new data sets, who in your organization can say this is A, B, C or D, and then when you come to use the data product, you know what it is. And also, how can you make it viable? Has it been through governance? Has it been through legal? Now, this is the kind of data product process that you should go on to build that data product. There's 4 kind of main bits, and I could do a whole talk about this itself, but broadly it's discover, define, develop, deliver, and learn and iterate. So just going through it quickly then. The discovery process, you've got to emphasize and explore the use cases from your business. You've got to ideate with that domain holder, the product managers, the end users, and you've got to prototype and test. This is well before you've done any kind of engineering or analytical work. You've then got to translate those use cases. Okay, so how are we going to build these? Where have we got existing data outside of the mesh? How do we bring that in? And really detail which ones you're going to do and which ones you're not going to do. You've got to take them through governance, so make sure that they understand it. And then you've got to build the stories for your data engineering team, and then you've got to create the feedback loop to what you're actually going to do in comparison to what you thought you might do at the start. Then you've got to go into the development part. So your engineers are exploring the data, they're normalizing it, they're feature engineering, and they're also scaling it to get it ready. Finally, you're going to deliver it. You're going to test it, QA it, validate it, and then you're going to coordinate it. And then at the end of all that, you're going to learn and iterate, and this is a continuous loop that you're going to go through. Now, data engineers are critical to this because they get a tool that sits outside, and their job, I think there's someone outside who's got a chef's uniform on one of the products. But that's literally what they're doing. They're breaking the products down into ingredients that can be used with the tooling. And that's really important because traditionally we've relied on the tools to do that, but we should be doing it as organisations and breaking it down to make the best use of that tool. And at the bottom you can see what kind of happens today. You've got some kind of cake, it's not the best cake, you feed it in, hope the tool can do something with it, hope for the best, blame the tool, try and get the price down. The data product adoption curve, so there's two parts to this. It works with the actual data products and also with the kind of uptake of data mesh. So at the start you've got data mesh enthusiasts. These are people that want to work with you. And this can be, they're really enthusiastic, but you've got to try and get past this phase as fast as you can, because you could end up creating a data product that ends up wedded to a specific user case and not generally. And what you want is those data products to be used generally. Next up, you kind of get to the early majority part. Now, few data products reach this stage because you've got a whole world of marketing to do after it. How do you get those data products out to the business? And then at the end, you've got to decide what you do before you reach there, because, as I said, the data has an expiry date. So when you introduce a data product, what's your go-to-market plan? You've created a data product. What are you going to do now? Add it to a catalogue and sit there and wait? Probably not. You've got to work out how you're going to open that up to the business so that they understand what this data product is, what it does, and get people to use it. As I said, the growth trajectory, a data catalogue on its own won't allow this to happen. So if you've got agile delivery managers, go-to-market teams, and then at the end, at some point, that data product's going to decline because the data is not relevant anymore, it's not used. Don't let that happen by accident, because there's three things that you can do. You can continue to improve that data product, you can maintain the data product, so put less people on it but still people are on it, or you can expire this data product. So it might be linked into tools, you're going to take that data product away and you've got a new data product that's ready to go. So 5 minutes left, 11 learnings. 1, hire data engineers. There's lots and lots of businesses that haven't put data engineers into their business yet, and these are going to be really critical to breaking down that data. Get data analysts to help shape the requirements. So the different domains will have different requirements, and the data analysts really understand that data by dealing with it every day, and they'll help to shape it. As I talked about, find the right balance between the thin slice approach and existing data sets if you've got lots already existing, because the business won't wait. So how will you move fast? The 5th one is your data products will break. So you've got to put monitoring in place, they've got to be robust, and they've got to be resilient, and that doesn't happen easy. Also, how do we show value? How do we show value before we start this up, and how do we show value at the end? Trying to get to that pound note as much as we can. Number 7, the self-serve platform, which is talked about in the data mesh. You've got to find the benefit in between it being really easy to use but also being secure and stable, and you've got to identify the users that are going to use it and speak to them often. Make sure that data governance own data quality and define what quality means to your organisation, and try as you can to make it objective. Data sharing, so you've got lots of different domains, you've gone through governance and tried to lock each part down, but how will you share that across domains? How will your analysts be able to analyse all these different data products across? So you've got to make it shareable. So making sure that the data governance and legal isn't too restrictive, so you've got to obviously comply, but you don't want to go overboard, especially when you've got existing data sources. And what strategy will you employ? Dictation or hearts and minds? And we know which one's easier and which one's harder. So finally then, as a data community, the call out is to keep it simple and bring in product methodology as much as you can and apply it to your data. Speak to your customers and start small. Test, learn, iterate, and create value. And create a modern data stack before AI. And this bit's critical, and hopefully it makes sense. Remember, common sense only makes sense when sense becomes common. Because in this room, you might all be nodding your head and agreeing, and when you speak to different vendors outside, they might all agree. But when you go back into your business tomorrow, they probably won't agree. So you've got to take all these learnings, try and make them as simple as possible to explain to the people that you're dealing with every day. But keep championing the right way to do data, and we'll get there. So I'll stay around at the end for some questions, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you've got any follow-up questions that you want to do. That's my name, and you'll see that picture of when I previously had a man bun. I've not got it anymore. But yeah, I'll stay around after this for any questions. Thank you very much for listening.